Foreman Flacutono whispered something to Klaus, who walked slowly over to the machine covered in smokestacks and began to operate its controls. Foreman Flacutono nodded to Klaus and clanged his pots together again.
"Let the stamping begin,"
he said in his terrible, muffled voice. The Baudelaires had no idea what Foreman Flacutono meant by stamping, and thought maybe it involved jumping up and down on the boards for some reason, like stamping on ants. But it turned out to be more like stamping a library book. The workers would lift a bundle of boards and place it on a special mat, and the machine would bring its huge flat stone down on top of the boards with a thunderous "Stamp!" leaving a label in red ink that said, "Lucky Smells Lumber Mill." Then everyone had to blow on the stamp, so it dried quickly. Violet and Sunny couldn't help wondering if people who would make their houses out of these boards would mind having the name of the lumber mill written on the walls of their homes. But, more important, they couldn't help wondering how Klaus knew how to work the stamping machine, and why Foreman Flacutono was having their brother at the controls, instead of Phil or one of the other employees.
"You see,"
Phil told the Baudelaire sisters from across a bundle of boards,
"there's nothing wrong with Klaus. He's working the machine perfectly. You spent all that time worrying for nothing. Stamp!"
"Maybe," Violet said doubtfully, blowing on the M in lumber mill.
"And I told you that stamping was the easiest part of the lumber mill industry," Phil said. "Stamp! Your lips get a little sore from all the blowing, but that's all."
"Weiro," Sunny said, which meant something like, "That's true, but I'm still worried about Klaus."
"That's the spirit,"
Phil said, misunderstanding her.
"I told you that if you just looked on the bright side—"
Stam! Crash!
Ah!
Phil fell to the floor in mid-sentence, his face pale and sweaty. Of all the terrible noises to be heard at the Lucky Smells lumber mill, this one was the most terrible by far. The thunderous "stamp"-ing sound had been cut off by a wrenching crash and a piercing shriek. The stamping machine had gone horribly wrong, and the huge flat stone had not been brought down where it was supposed to be brought down, on the bundle of boards. Most of the stone had been brought down on the string machine, which was now hopelessly smashed, but part of it had been brought down on Phil's leg. Foreman Flacutono dropped his pots and ran over to the controls of the stamping machine, pushing the dazed Klaus aside. With a flip of the switch, he brought the stone up again, and everyone gathered around to see the damage. The cage part of the string machine was split open like an egg, and the string had become completely entwined and entangled. And I simply cannot describe the grotesque and unnerving sight. The words grotesque and unnerving here mean twisted, tangled, stained, and gory, of poor Phil's leg.